I was shocked when I started my business how many people from my previous work knew me and were willing to hire me and work with me. And the power of that network is what powers and still powers this business today. And so that is something that you don't realize the value of, but it is an asset, just like any other asset. It is an asset that requires nurturing and care. I think it has to do with showing up and being yourself consistently and people knowing who you are and knowing what they can expect and what they can get. And that's worth millions and millions of dollars.
Welcome to Women's Million Dollar Conversations with Alice Tang, where we share stories from successful businesswomen who have saved, earned, or sold over $1 million and discuss how they built their success and insights to help you achieve your goals. Now, let's join the conversation.
Good morning, everyone. I am Alice Tang, the host of Women's Million Dollar Conversations. Today, I am very happy because I'm sitting down with one of my friends. Her name is Shari Dunn. Shari, welcome and good morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning to you too.
Shari actually is hot off the press, author of the book Qualified, which is right up her head there. Since this is Women's Million Dollar Conversation, we interview guests who has made, sold, or accumulate $1 million. We have to ask, tell us about your journey to your first $1 million, Shari.
From a consultant perspective, which I'm a consultant. And when I started my consulting business 5 years ago, heading into year 6 now, I didn't know anything about it really. I had always thought that being a consultant or running your own business was for people who already had money. It seemed like it was something that people who already had money did. It didn't seem like something I did or regular people did. And I had 2 friends, people you might know, Tracy Rossi and Nina Bird. I was running a nonprofit and they're like, you're making so much money for this organization. You work so hard at doing that. You could do that for yourself and you can make that kind of money. And I was like, no. I don't know how to do that. I don't know anybody who's done that. My only experience with people who ran their own business were relatives who seemed to be struggling running their own business. It didn't seem like something that I wanted to do. But finally, I did take the plunge. And the first year, I did well, better than I had expected. I had no idea about that. And then the second year was really the year where I made in revenue, obviously not to me directly, but in revenue, cross that amount. The main moral of that story is having people who believe in you and tell you that you can use your intelligence and your ability to make money for yourself and for the things that you do was difficult for me to hear. And I hadn't really understood that was possible.
As I'm hearing what you said, I just felt like I have a lot of goosebumps coming through me because if there isn't people in our life who care so much that they risk, probably we got upset with them by telling us the truth, it wouldn't be the Shari Dunn sitting in front of us with the book there. And
That's
it
true.
wouldn't be
That's
Alice
true.
Tang, who is here trying to make Women's Million Dollar Conversation and create as many role models as we can so that those people who hope to get to the level of Shari and other alumni, I call them, they have hope. Without hope, what can we do?
And you are so right. I think a lot of people might be insulted, right? If somebody says, hey, you should quit your job or you should do something else, or people are easily insulted and not open to even friendly critique. And it wasn't that I wasn't open. It's just that I didn't think it was possible. But it got to the point where I was like, yeah, I need to do something different. But it's the combination of belief and being open to hearing what people are saying.
That's right. That's right. I think it takes a lot of courage and searching to find that. It took you 2 years to get there. What are the biases and hurdles did you face on your journey to financial freedom?
Setbacks. I think that's the thing. It's like there is this thing about having reserves when you start and you don't, that is very tricky. And I think I'm still on the road to financial freedom in a large part because, as you know, consulting business goes up, it goes down.
That's right.
And we are in an environment right now where a lot of the work that I do is like literally under threat from the US government, which is insane. And so I think it's resilience, and I think it's paying attention. I very much, in running a organization or a business I was running that wasn't mine, exercised a lot of oversight, paying attention to a lot of things. And yet, when I was running my own business, I paid attention and had oversight, but it was like, wait a minute, I need to really go over every single thing. You hire people who have a lot of faith in, who you're like, okay, they know what they're doing here. And it was like, no, it's just like running any other thing. I still have to be the ultimate backstop for everything. And I think when you're running your own business, it can be easy to put your trust in other people who are experts, but you still do have to be the backstop. You still have to be the ultimate reviewer of everything. And especially, let's say somebody is in a creative business or other businesses, they may not have an inclination to do that, but you really do have to do that.
I appreciate so much about that because your name is in the door in front of your business. So who's responsible? Not the person who's doing my website, not the person who's doing my numbers, my books. It's me. Yeah. Must be some times in your first 2 years when you're running up to that million. There are times that you were thinking, it's so hard. These are the hurdles after the hurdles. What kept you going?
For me, life is a series of practical issues and solutions. You have to pay your rent, you have to have somewhere to live, you have to, I'm a very practical person in that regard. And so I guess I think about things in terms of breaking them off into bite-sized pieces. Okay, what do I have to do now, as opposed to looking at the totality of something, because looking at the totality can be super overwhelming. And what ultimately kept me going and keeps me going is I really believe in and love the work that I do. And to your point, it led to me writing this book and getting a book deal with a major publisher. And that definitely keeps me going. And right now, in this world we're in and the environment we're in, where there is so much hostility to the work that I do, I think what keeps me going is about a belief of what is right and what is wrong, and what our obligation and responsibility is while we're alive. So these things are perennial in me. So, whatever is necessary, that's what we do.
Very noble. I'll also pick on you believe so much about the belief that you're in. What is right, wrong, you have the responsibility while you are alive, that purpose. And that's why you created the book. Your book, Qualified, has been used, I overheard from the grapevines, as a curriculum at a prominent university. Tell
Yeah.
us about the book and the process of writing and publishing.
Yeah, one thing is book publishing is a business. So it's
Ooh.
very much like what you're talking about. And that is something you don't know, at least I didn't know until I was in it. I would say that the publishing of a book is 20% your idea and your writing, and 80% the business of books. I wish I would have known that ahead of time, and I did not know that. I have an agent, and she's great, but I think that with a new author, not really being educated in the ways of major publishing was a shock to me, as far as the amount of investment and business that it is. And so writing a book is just part of it. The two hardest parts are getting an agent and getting a book deal. And I got the agent because a law school friend of mine is a best-selling crime fiction writer, David Ellis. He writes with James Patterson. And so I had reached out to him with my book proposal, and he shared it with his agent, and she generously offered to represent me. And
Oh
that
my.
is a huge hurdle, because in traditional publishing, you just can't go to the publisher directly unless you're famous. If you're famous and already rich, all these rules don't apply. But for regular people, you really need an agent. And having the agent then elevates your proposal up to the point where major publishing houses will consider it. And the book went to auction, meaning multiple people bid on it. And the winner was HarperCollins. So that is a business process, assessing who has the best bid and what they're offering. And then set about the business of writing a book, have an in-house editor who worked with me, which is great. It is very hard when you have an idea to share your thoughts with somebody and think they're going to critique you harshly, but it actually ended up being, I think, a great process that made a better book. But the selling and business of the book is the marketing promotion part. The publishing industry went through a big change in 2008, went through a big change during COVID in the way they work and the way they interact and how they spend money, and has just been on that ever since. And basically, what that means is that you, the author, have to put a lot more money into the promotion of your work in your book, which is wild because you would think a large entity like a publishing house would do that. But again, if you're wealthy, if you're famous, then you do get a lot of money put into you by the house. But if you're not, you really have to do that. And in this world now, you have to be able to sell your own book in a lot of ways through your social media, through your work. It's just a very different world than publishing was, say, even 15 years ago. And you have to approach this part of it as a business person. And that is something I wish I would have known ahead of time. I definitely have times where I feel frustrated about it. And I honestly, the business side does take away a little of the joy of the publishing side. So getting to the point that you can separate those things, I think, is just a process. I do have to sometimes remember that, oh, I published a book with a major publishing house. That's insane. It's got my name on it. But again, I get about the work. I'm the kind of person who gets about the work of things. And so once I figured out, oh, this is totally a hustle and this is something I'm going to have to hustle out just like everything else, I'm like, okay, so what does that look like? And I created a Substack where I write daily, where I try to promote the messages of the book and the messages that I think are important. And I post a lot on LinkedIn. And through that LinkedIn posting is how I made the relationship with the folks in the UK. One of the woman who runs the Black Council Forum in the UK, interacted with me and asked me if I would do a webinar um, for some attorneys in the UK. And I did, and they really, really liked the webinar. And that's how I got invited to the UK to present at the conference.
I love it. I love it. Now, so you touch upon LinkedIn. So this is a good segue talking about the network. So would you share with us how vital your network is, especially you have moved from city to city?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. We talked about this, Alice. So I spent the first half of my professional career first practicing law. Then I moved to Washington, D.C., where I worked for the National Association of Legal Services Attorneys, which is what I was. So it was in the same career, but I was doing policy. Then I moved to New York, where I was a funder of that system. So I spent a decade solidly in that world. And so I knew people, people knew me. I had credibility. I had a lot of connections and weight. And then I tell people I lived in New York during 9/11. So I try to give that as the reason. But I joined the circus and became a journalist because I had always really wanted to be a journalist. And so I went on this other career path. And it was only many years later that I realized that I had cashed in something when I left New York and the East Coast in that work, because I had a network of people who knew me and they knew me at a high level. And that had a financial value that I had not thought about, I hadn't fully understood. And so now, these many years later, here in Portland, people always ask me, oh, are you going to move somewhere else? I'm like, no. Like, I have spent another decade here cultivating a community and a culture who people who know me, know my work, know my value, know my morals. And that is invaluable. That is invaluable from a business perspective. People who will speak your name in rooms, people who will call you up about a job, people who will refer you to things. And that value kicked in when I started my business. I was shocked when I started my business how many people from my previous work knew me and were willing to hire me and work with me. And the power of that network is what powers and still powers this business today. And so that is something that you don't realize the value of, but it is an asset, just like any other asset. It is an asset that requires nurturing and care. And it's not something that you think of exploitively. It's actually something that happened very naturally. Like I did not know I was doing business development before I started a business, but apparently I was doing business development. But I think it has to do with showing up and being yourself consistently and people knowing who you are and knowing what they can expect and what they can get. And that's worth millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, your community, your network is really helping a lot of the journey that you have been on.
Yeah. And I try to show up for people in ways. I'm very sensitive to the fact that, I did not grow up wealthy. I grew up working class, and I did not have access to nor know any of the secrets that people with money and access know. And so I'm the kind of person, like, if I learn something or know something, I'm gonna tell everybody. I'm like, let me tell you what they're doing in here, because I wanted to know. I had a young man a few months back who just contacted me on LinkedIn. He is a student at, I think, University of California, USC. And he said, "Oh, I read your bio on LinkedIn and it's really interesting. And I want to do something like that. I want to be a lawyer, but I also want to do other stuff. And would you talk to me?" And I'm like, "Sure." And every time I do that, then the day I'm supposed to do the call, I'm like, "Oh, why did I do this? Schedule this call?" And then when I have the call, I'm like, "Oh, I'm so glad I had that call," right? Because it renews in me an energy about why I'm doing what I'm doing. And somebody who's at the early part of their life, so excited still, so interested still. And I was like, I got more out of my conversation with Kevin than Kevin got out of me, because then I felt re energized. And so I do try to keep a lot of space and availability for people, because I remember and I know what it's like not to have people offer you help and not to have people give you information. And so it's important for me to do that.
Beautiful. We are both in the same camp. I love to give. And there is a point I was in business with a business partner, and he said that you always give, but think about the business pipeline. I
Mhm.
said, oh, well, it will come because law of large numbers, right? When you help enough
Yeah.
people, people will show up. Sometimes it
Yeah.
takes one to finish the
Yeah.
year strong. I've been there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
As you think of sending the elevator down to the next generation, as you just described, what is one piece of advice among all the advices you want to give them? One.
Oh, save early. I did not do that. No one told me that. I didn't know anything about that. Again, I come from a working class community where people are working, just surviving paycheck to paycheck. Save early, and just even if it's a few dollars, like there's something about that, as everybody knows, compound interest and da da da. But you hear about that. But if you are raised in a paycheck to paycheck environment where people are just doing their best to manage each month, then you hear the words, but they don't really mean anything to you because it's not relevant to you.
Good. I have a couple more curiosity here. What's your money legacy? How do you leverage your money and your platform to make a difference in the next generation or for the next generations?
I think of things more broadly, like with time. I serve on a lot of boards, but I also contribute time, a lot of time, to trying to look at systemic things like nature. I'm on Friends of the Columbia Gorge board, which is about preserving the legacy of the Columbia Gorge for generations to come. And that is a big lift, right? I'm on a state board that looks at workforce and the importance of access. So I try to think broadly. Personally, it's strange. So I don't have children. I have nieces and nephews, and really trying to figure out what that looks like from an estate planning perspective is something that I have put some work into. And I think just like we're talking about now, saying the things out loud that people need to hear, that other people, I think some people are really hesitant to say, I didn't know that, or I didn't do that, or because they want to present a certain way. And I don't have any of that. I don't have any of that problems. And I think even if one or two people hear that and change how they are doing things, I think that's huge.
Thank you so much. We're grateful for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me and for what you do and the ways in which you show up for other women and from a generational perspective also. So thank you.